Everyone, LeoBlade13 here, welcoming you back to another Dragoborne Let's Talk, where today we're going to be taking a look at all of the remaining green creatures from Oath of Blood. So, all of these are up on Dragorgle if you want to check that out and you don't feel like waiting for the next video, and there is a link to the Dragoborne Facebook page as well, so you can check that out and join in the discussions that are happening there. But anyways, jumping right into this, we have Gallant Chevalier. So he's a 3-drop Zebra with 3 attack and 3 endurance. He has an ability which is when this creature is summoned, if you have a yellow creature, choose one of your creatures, it gets +1/+1 and must be blocked if able for this turn. So, it's a decent card. I mean, it's definitely not the worst card in the set, and definitely not the best, but being able to boost something up and then forcing it to be blocked is pretty good because it may get rid of one of your opponent's creatures that's been sticking around for a while and causing some problems. But I do really like this card, or I like the potential of this card, let's say that. And, I mean, the artwork is amazing. It's a Night Zebra. But overall, if you have room, it might be a one-of in a green-yellow deck, but I think there are definitely some better options. Next up, we have Maiden of the Grove. She's a 3-drop with 2 attack, 2 endurance, with the ability, when this creature is summoned, you may siphon a green 4. If you do, put the top card of your deck into your resource zone. So, just some extra resource acceleration. And then she has the Fort Burst effect that you put this card into your resource zone. So, she's like a Fleetwing Sprite, except for, instead of dropping a card from your hand, you just have to siphon a green 4, which is great if you can roll a 5 or a 6 and keep the dice alive. But this is definitely a good card. I think it's one of the only more generic resource accelerations that we have, because we do have the bull or pig, whatever it was, but that was more for machines. So it's nice to see some generic stuff. However, I think it's going to work best in a more mono green, maybe dual green, but maybe we'll see this in the next trial deck, since that's a green yellow. But yeah, I think overall it's a decent card. I think I still like Fleetwing Sprite a little bit better. Next up, we have Augmented Sniper, who is a 2-drop with 1 attack, 3 endurance, and the ability Siphoning a green 2. The next creature you play this turn costs 1 less to play. This ability cannot reduce the cost to 0 or less, and the ability can only be used once per turn. So I really like this just because instead of resource acceleration, it's just allowing you to kind of ignore one of the costs. So instead of accelerating that one resource, you're just paying for 1 less. So it's essentially the same thing. However, it is able to play around cards like the big yellow thing that destroys black and red resources and anything else that destroys resources. So I think this is going to be a really decent card, and it's a machine elf. So this is definitely going to see play in a green-blue X machine deck, which, after looking at all these cards, I'm getting really excited for. I think there's a lot of options. But, yeah, this is a really decent card, and I kind of like where green is going. I think green may be able to stand on its own eventually, especially with all the elf support. Next up, we have Supreme Foresight, which is a 3-drop spell, and as part of the cost to play this spell, siphon X. Then you reveal X cards from the top of your deck, put up to 2 spells from among them into your hand, and shuffle the rest of the cards into your deck. And then, if you have a yellow 1 to 2, you may put all of the revealed spells into your hand instead. So, just lets you draw more cards. I think this is going to be really decent with another card that we're going to see, just because it's support for spells, and it's nothing specific, it's just as long as it's a spell, you can add it to your hand. I just don't like how it's a 3-cost spell. I think that's a little bit too much, but again, it is one of the first cards we're seeing that allows you to add cards from your deck to your hand. Then moving on, we have Axel Littlefang, who, if you've been reading the comic, is actually the main character in the story, and he's a 4-drop with 2 attack, 2 endurance, and he gets +1/+1 for each different trait among your other creatures. So the trait would be right above the name, where in his case he's a werebeast. So he is able to go up pretty high. I mean, he's definitely not going to see any use in a machine deck, since it's only going to be machines. But in more of a variant deck, like nothing's coming to mind. But if he's with a bunch of other just essentially random quote unquote cards, I think that's where he's going to be pretty good, because he's going to be at least like a 4/4/5/5, somewhere around that range. Then he's got the Dragocross ability with any color. If there are 5 or more different traits among your other creatures, this creature cannot be chosen by spells or abilities. So it does seem like uh, quite a high threshold, but I believe it counts those with dual traits just as long as they're different. So if there's a machine elf, then that counts as 2, and I'm not sure if he counts himself. No, it says other creatures, so he doesn't count himself, so I guess Werebeast would count again, but I think he's not going to see too much play. I'm sure we'll get later versions of him as the story progresses, and I bet those will get better. Much like Tank of the Toeborn in Chaotic, if you ever played that game, we kind of had a really sucky version of him in the first set, and then after the Merlians invaded, we got a better card, and then when he became the general, we got one of his best cards. I feel like the same thing's going to happen with Axel. But moving on, we have Shadow Hunter. He's a 3-drop creature with 2 attack, 2 endurance, and the ability when you play a spell that chooses a creature on the field, copy that spell. You may make different choices for the copy. So this is the card that I was talking about that would pair really well nicely with this, just because this lets you add spells from your deck to your hand, and then he lets you duplicate the effects. So something like Torch. If you have a red 6, play a Torch, you can do 6 damage to 2 creatures, because it's essentially you're playing 2 copies of it. So I really like that. Um, it does seem like it works with Fort Bursts too. So if you have Gluttony of Albert and he's on the field, you can make 2 choices for that. But it doesn't let you use Gluttony from your hand, because that targets the fort, and this is only when a creature is targeted. So of course, if your opponent has a field of all zeros, they're not going to be able to do anything. So it is a really decent card in my opinion, and I'm excited to see what kind of decks come out utilizing this card. Next up, we have Resolute Paladin, which is probably one of my favorite cards from here. This is essentially a better version of Guardian of the Forest. Guardian of the Forest was when your fort took damage, you could stand it, and then if it was yellow Draco Crossed, you could draw a card, and it has the same stats. It was a 3-drop, 0 attack, 5 endurance, but this creature has the same Drago Cross ability. If it's yellow Drago Crossed and he blocks, draw a card, but his ability is at the end of the battle that this creature blocked, stand it and remove all of the damage it has taken. So it can essentially block an infinite number of times unless your opponent rams it with something with 6 or higher endurance, assuming it's Drago Crossed. Or not endurance, attack, assuming that it's Drago Crossed. So I can see this being a really stally card, and those green-yellow decks with Resolute Paladin and Sigrun are going to be so annoying to deal with, and it's definitely going to be one of the top decks, except the mirror match is going to suck. I can see that right now. Just a Resolute Paladin and a Teriel sitting on the last fort with Sigrun sitting off to the side, that's going to be painful, but I really like this card, and I'm excited to see what it does. And then next up, we have Holt Stalker. So this is a 7-drop creature with 4 attack, 4 endurance, but you can play it as an ambush, and if it is an ambush and the fort is attacked, you can summon it. So it has the same conditions as Kingslayer B or Earthen Guard Golem, all the summoning conditions that I really like. But then she is also immune black and immune red. So this is the card that I have been waiting for, something that's not affected by all that red destruction, not affected by Gluttony of Albert, and I am really excited for this card. Um, I don't know if it's going to replace Kingslayer Bees in my deck, but I'm definitely going to have to make room for it. I think Kingslayer Bee is an amazing choice, but she just adds a little bit more power. That 4 attack and 4 endurance is going to allow you to survive a hit. Unlike Kingslayer Bee, whose true endurance usually drops every time, and you don't have the creature on the field anymore. But I'm excited for this card, and I think it's definitely going to be pretty good, assuming how much black is going to be running around. And I'm sure red is still going to be just as great, especially with raid coming out. But let me know what you guys think about this card. Do you think it's going to be used, or do you think Kingslayer Bee is still going to hold up? Next up, we have Crusher of Armies, who is a 6-drop with 5 attack, 7 endurance, and when he attacks, if you have a yellow creature, this creature cannot be blocked by creatures with attack lower than this creature's attack. So if he's Drago Crossed, then he can pretty much get through your opponent's entire defense line. There's not much stuff with more than 6 attack, barring like a Terrax. That's the only thing that's coming to mind that is actually used. Zargo and Fafnir if it's Drago Crossed. But yeah, not too many things have 6 or more attack. So I really like this card. However, I don't think it's going to be used just because of the high cost, and there's so much better creatures. So many better creatures. I cannot talk this morning. Next up, we have Swampland Berserker. It's a 5-drop vanilla with 5 attack, 7 endurance, and just kind of meh attack. But next up, we have Brutal Grizzly, who, same thing, it's 4 cost, 4 attack, 5 endurance, just a vanilla. They're probably never going to see play. Then we have a 2-drop Canopy Scout with 2 attack, 2 endurance. So, I know there's a term for that in Magic, when something's 2 cost with 2 attack, 2 in defense in that game. I can't remember what the term is. If you know, let me know down below. But at the start of your draw step, or when this creature is summoned, look at 2 cards from the top of your deck and put them on the top of your deck in any order. So I really like this card, just because you get to look at the top 2 cards. So and you're putting them both back on the top. So what that means is you can control what card you draw, and you can control to an extent what color goes into your resource zone. So I feel like that's going to be the more prevalent one, where you are choosing the card going into your resource zone on the next turn. So, I do really like this card. I'm not quite sure how that effect works based on the ore, so I believe it works at the start of all of your draw steps and when he's summoned, but it could be that it can only be used once when he hits the field, which also makes sense, but then I'm not quite sure why that at the start of your draw step would be included. But I think it's a really interesting card, and if you know about the effect, let me know down below. But moving on, we have Fairy Alley. So she's a 1-drop with 1 attack, 1 endurance. With the continuous ability, the first elf you play during your turn costs 1 less to play, and this ability cannot reduce the cost to 0 or less. So, more of that opposite resource acceleration where you're paying less for your creatures, and it is an elf, so once Nature's Madness rolls around in February, I think elves are going to have a really good thing going for them, much like machines do right now. But not much to say about this card. It is the first elf you play during your turn, and she is an elf, so she cannot count herself, so it'll be the turns after she is summoned. So that is something to keep in mind. And then the final card we have to talk about is a spell card Sky and Earth. So it's a 3-drop spell, and the ability is put 2 cards from the top of your deck into your resource zone, and put one of your resources on the top of your deck. So I really like that, just essentially what growth does if you have a yellow dice, but it costs 3 rather than 2 that growth is, or growing touch. And then it does have a fort burst effect, unlike growing touch, which is put this card into your discard pile and put the top card of your deck into your resource zone. So more resource acceleration. However, I don't think this card is going to get played as much. I think growing touch is still a better choice in a green-yellow deck, but overall, I think green is really coming together as a color, much better than what it is after Rally to War, and I think now it does have a chance on its own, especially with the elf support, but I think green-yellow is where um, this is going to go. I think that's the best chance that it has to compete with the black discarding and the blue-green machines. But let me know what you guys think. Are you excited for all the green cards, or what color are you most looking forward to? Be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss any future content. And be sure to follow me on Twitter. Link is down below in the description. And as always, thanks for watching.